We live. What up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Derailed, courtesy of Arcaicskidz. We have Dan Behrman with us. I'm really excited about this. I'm sure most of you know he's running for governor of Texas. Has my full support because, well, the Uniparty sucks. So, what's up, Dan?
Awesome. How's it going, man? It's going pretty good.
Great.
Awesome.
So, you are running for governor in the communist state of Texas. And I can say that because, you know, a lot of people say, oh, we're the free state. And I'm like, no, you're not. You have some of the worst gun laws of any red state out there. You know, they're nut jobs. So, you know, I just saw an article where some little girls got a cease and desist order for selling eggs. I was like, what the? That's not a free state, you douchebags.
Yeah, that one, that was like weird that I saw that too, because there was this whole thing going on in California. Well, I had just posted a picture of Eric Garner saying, you know, this new menthol thing, like, you know, don't act like they're not going to come and kill you over this. They're not willing to kill you over this law.
Well, they are.
Yeah, but then, so I see this thing with these girls, and I'm like, man. When I was running for president, so this would have been like, I think late 2019. Mm-hmm. There were these women that I talked to out in Southern California, in Riverside County, actually. And there was this thing going on where they had killed over 1 million chickens. The government came in and they killed over 1 million chickens that were like privately owned, like people keeping pets, you know, and this is like, you know, outside of the city. You know, people have like, you know, an acre or whatever. Mm-hmm. They've got, you know, little chicken coops in their backyard. And they came in, they're sitting there stomping on their necks, shooting them with AR-15s. Like it was insane. And they said it was because, oh, there's this new chicken flu going around. And
well, you don't just murder people's chickens. That's not.
They did a lot of it without warrants. They had the health department there with AR-15s, which is like, that doesn't make sense. Like AR-15s and like those white like virus suits, you know, that they wear in the movies. It was absolutely surreal. But like, so I see the story about the girls like not being able to sell their eggs, and I'm just like, this is like it's the same story all over again.
That's a straight up police state shit. Right.
It's nuts, man. Yeah. Meanwhile, so a lot of people know I spend most of my time on vacation in Mexico, and like what's really awesome about that is seeing the differences. Where, you know, everybody knows that, like, you know, the Mexican government is pretty corrupt, but it's also a lot smaller than the American government. So the damage that they do in their corruption is relatively small. So you don't see little girls getting arrested or getting cited for selling eggs. In fact, you'll see people selling all kinds of stuff on the side of the road without permits and everything else. And it's like, it doesn't bother anybody. You know, it's nobody really cares, but there's like, even if it was illegal, there's not enough government to enforce that.
Right.
And which I think is really interesting. But at the end of the day too, it's like, you don't see homelessness at the same rate that you see it in the United States, because it's like, even if you're not doing that well, like there's always something you can do to make a few bucks to hold you over for the next couple days. There's always something, but it's like in the US, it's like, no, that's illegal. Oh, you want to sleep in your car? Sorry, that's illegal. We're going to arrest you. We're going to impound your car. And, oh, you couldn't afford rent. How the hell are you going to get your car out of impound? That's getting auctioned. You don't have a car anymore.
Right.
It's absolutely insane how destructive our government is. And people just don't see it. They think it's, you know, oh, we need more government. We need them to like throw more money at people to like end homelessness. And it's like, no, you need to give people their freedom back. You need to stop stealing their property, dragging them out of their homes and everything else. I don't know why people can't see this, but it's like, it's I don't know.
No one ever sees it until it's happening to them or you know, a family member. But on your point to Mexico, I remember the first time I went to Mexico, and I was like, holy shit, this is what a free market looks like.
Right.
I literally, I couldn't speak Spanish, and I had this young guy. I mean, he was probably like 10 or something, and he came up calling me gringo, saying that, you know, he'd get And I'm like, I don't understand. And he's like, I get for you. I'll speak for you. And I'm like, oh, sweet. So I like hired this little kid, to be an interpreter and like a runner or whatever. And he'd run around and like get me stuff, get me better deals, when I was buying shit or whatever. He'd like, no. And he'd argue with the person or whatever and give me a better price, So like I had him for like 3 days, man. He just followed me around for like 3 solid days. And I gave him $50 when I was leaving. And I like, you would have thought that dude just like hit the lottery or something, the way he responded,
Yeah. Like, I mean, that's a lot for a lot of people. I mean, and it's interesting too, because you see like, I mean, yeah, everybody knows you can sell stuff on the side of the road, but like everyone in America is like, oh, there's no jobs. And it's like, oh, there's jobs. I see people like, if there's nothing to do, these people will go to like a crowded parking lot, like at a grocery store, with a rag or like an old t-shirt, and they'll just start like, hey, over here, and they'll just start like, waving it around like, hey, there's a parking space over here, and they get, somebody
make a buck or two.
Yeah, and it's like, and like I've done the math on this before. Like some of these guys are making more than $10 an hour.
Oh yeah,
doing this.
Yeah.
Like it's like, it seems like, oh yeah, it's like you give him 10 pesos, which is like 50 cents, but it's like he's doing this like constantly. He's if he's turning over 50 cars an hour at 10 pesos,
he's doing pretty good.
That's $25. And yeah, so like but I guess Americans have kind of lost the value of small change, because we're like, no, we just need to get paid for the whole hour. And it's which is it's weird, but yeah, I think we've lost track of that. But then also that's illegal in the United States. What's this guy doing here? Why is he like, I'm not going to pay this guy. Who does he think he is? Go get a job. And it's like, he has a job. There was his own job.
There was a kid that just got arrested in California 2 days ago. I have to find that story again and share it on social media. But he got arrested. I'm not making this up, for putting people's shopping carts away for them for 50 cents. So they'd be putting their groceries in their car or truck, whatever, and he'd run up and go, for 50 cents, I'll run your cart back. Well, most people are like, shit, here's $1. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have to be out here anymore. I don't got to do that or whatever. And like he was, I'm guessing he had to be doing pretty well, but they arrested him. Like,
I want to see that indictment. Like, what does that say?
Me too.
Racketeering. Like, that's insane. That is crazy. Absolutely insane.
Yeah. But I mean,
I gotta find.
Let's get into the old in chief and the FDA going after menthols, and it's not just menthol. It's like flavored papers, flavored tobacco. Right. I guess they're going after all of it. One of my favorites,
which includes Swisher Sweets, which is something.
That's
something
like an entire brand you're going to wipe out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's nuts.
But one of my favorite headlines that I saw was that they said, "Oh well, we're not going to target black people." I'm like, the entire thing targets black people. Like they make up something like 90% of menthol smokers, like in America, and you're going to ban that? No, that's absolutely targeted towards them. So like your point with the Eric Gardner thing, I'm like, if they will kill a man for selling us, singles or whatever, they're absolutely, I mean, the ATF's just waiting for the next Waco, and it's going to be over menthol. This is insane.
Yeah.
So
what's their rationale? Like what's so bad about menthol?
My understanding is that I mean, there's a couple of different arguments, but one of them that they made was that because disproportionately, colored people or people of color, or whatever the hell the term is these days, I don't know, smoke them, it disproportionately puts their health at risk. And I'm like, but that's not fucking your decision. That's not up to you. You know what I mean? Prohibition doesn't work.
I mean, like, so it's like literally that's their only reason. It's not that menthol is bad for you. It's not that, because I mean, like, you don't see them like banning
cigarettes
the rat poison.
Are bad for you.
Right. But they're not banning the rat poison that's in the rest of the cigarettes.
No.
They're just banning the menthol. And so wait a minute. Is menthol more addictive or something? Or are they like, because I mean, let's say theoretically they are absolutely able to completely eradicate this and there's no black market. So what? Everybody's going to go over to switching to smoking something else instead. And it's like, okay, so so you're still selling the same number of cigarettes, you just don't have the menthol flavoring. So now, okay, so you just took away the flavoring.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I don't,
thank you.
I was trying to look for like, okay, is there any health reason behind this? Like, does it make it worse? You know what I mean? Is there something? I remember when I was a kid, I heard something about menthol cigarettes will crystallize your lungs or something. Well, that's like total crap. Like that's been debunked a bunch of times. But I was looking to see like, is there something that they found that like makes these more dangerous somehow or whatever? And I can't find anything. I mean, I can find a lot of studies that like, hey, cigarettes are bad for you. I'm like, well, no shit. Like it says that on the box. Like,
right.
You know? But my outlook is just like, you know, Mark Schneider, who's a nuclear operator, and he's been on the show a couple times because I've been really pushing nuclear power. Like if you people that are all about the climate and green energy, like we've had green energy for like 70 years, like, you know,
yeah.
But
ooh, it's scary. It's scary.
Yeah,
we're gonna have a meltdown. We're all gonna die.
It's dangerous. Yeah. It's like it's really not, honestly. But he tweeted something the other day about like sugar kills like, you know, a shit ton of people every year or whatever. And like the sugar industry subsidized, you know, and he's like, why don't we ban sugar? That'd save more lives than banning menthol. And I'm like, how about we don't ban things? Like that's a thought. You know what I mean? How about the government? They can just bite me. They don't need to protect me from me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, right? Like all government knows how to do is use force. You know, I mean, first of all, they're like saying, okay, well, first we want to play God and modify human behavior because, you know, oh, that's unacceptable that people are doing X, Y, and Z unless, you know, unless I'm profiting off of it, then it's okay. But they want to control human behavior, and the only way they understand to do it is through force. Like, you know, like do what I say, or else you will be thrown in a cage, or we will take your money, or we will, you know, all these things that they come up with. And there's never this is one, like when I first started getting into like the liberty movement and the liberty mindset, one of the things that, because I used to always fight traffic tickets just because I used to, you know, I used to think I was like so like awesome for like being able to like, you know, cheat the system and not have to give them money. But then I got to the point where like I learned, like I was trying to learn how to fight the camera traffic lights. And then, you know, and then I just started falling into the research on them. And you know, I started asking some really basic questions like, okay, if these lights are there to save us from accidents, right?
Right.
Most red light accidents happen within the first half a second of the light turning green in the other direction. Why don't they just turn the light red, wait for an entire second before they turn the other direction green? That would eliminate like 90% of the accidents versus putting a camera there, which have been statistically shown to increase the number of accidents because people are like, oh my God, I got to make the light before the camera goes off, and they start panicking and they're not thinking rationally. And that actually causes more accidents, but it generates revenue.
Right.
So like, it's like, that was kind of a big eye opener for me to like see like what they're really going after, to see like, it's not really about safety. It's about revenue to them. All of this, it sucks because like, you know I have some extremely, you know, in other people's eyes, I have some extremely radical views.
So did the founding fathers.
Yeah, but what's interesting is like I like going back, like if I were to look at my even 20-year-old self, like he would not believe some of the shit that I say. He would just be, can I swear on this show?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like he would not believe some of the shit that I'm saying, and he'd call me a conspiracy theorist and all this other stuff. But it's
he
like
also wouldn't believe that people were going to get locked in their house for a year.
Yeah, it's insane. But it's like we have to wake up to this, because it's the reality is the people that we've put in control of our lives do not care anything about us. They've never met us. They don't have to live by the same rules that they create. They live outside of the system. And it's really just a shame.
that's because we have a complete and total class system in America. People don't want to admit it, but the lawmakers almost always are also lawbreakers, and it doesn't matter. Like, you can't do anything to them.
Right.
So that's
because they control the law. They control who gets arrested, who gets prosecuted. Exactly.
So, basically all traffic law is designed for revenue. That's all it's designed for. They don't. The town I live in or live outside of, I just saw an article yesterday, and it literally shocked me, where the city's actually going to remove stoplights and put stop signs. And I was like, holy shit, like, you're doing something useful. That's insane to me.
Well, I mean, is that better or worse?
Well, I guess there's an argument to be made there, but these lights have cameras on them and stuff like that, and it causes traffic jams. And
okay,
I don't know. They basically said the lights are causing disruption of traffic flow, and so they need to move it back to stop signs so that traffic can flow more freely than the lights allow for. And I'm like, okay. We'll see how it works.
Going back to what's the incentive motive? Like, is it because it's easier for them to say, "Oh, you didn't come to a complete stop," and give out a ticket?
Well, probably.
If they're getting rid of cameras, I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, probably. I'm sure they're thinking some way they can get some revenue out of this or whatever. But one of the things they just recently did last year it was I guess in a way kind of a perfect time for them to start. But all of Main Street, they took out all of the stoplights and they put in roundabouts. So there was like a stoplight every block for like 12 blocks, and they took them all out and they put in roundabouts or whatever, which absolutely have been proven to be way better for traffic pattern, flow pattern or whatever. But
it's funny. They have those everywhere in Mexico, and it's funny because everybody Americans hate them for some reason.
I love them.
But it's like
they're so much easier.
Yeah, it's like to me, it's like you used to look at them and be like, "Oh, that's some silly British thing," but it's like maybe that's why they hate it. But like, no, they're actually really effective, and you don't have to stop and sit there at a light for 5 minutes, and it's great.
Yeah. I don't know how well they do with huge heavy traffic flow, but in my experience, they actually work pretty well. So
yeah,
I like them. So I've got your website down in the description below. Plus, it's right there in the banner there. So everyone needs to go and check that out. And you can read some of Dan's radical ideas, which I find mostly hilarious. But you can also support him and reach out to him and stuff like that. One of the things that you do is help people with medicine costs. Now, we can talk as much about it as you want, but I would really like to focus on the fact that you shouldn't have to do that. But I don't think most people know why, say, insulin, for instance, costs so much in America. Why don't you explain that to people?
Sure. So we have this situation where there's one specific brand that I use as a reference, but it's pretty much the same across the board, and even for different medicines too. It's not just insulin, but so there's this company called Lantus, which is a German company. They produce these insulin pens, where basically how it works is you have a pen, and you say, okay, do I need, instead of having to take a vial with a syringe and load up the syringe, how much do I need, measure it, and all that kind of stuff. It's just, you just click it. I need, 1, 2, 3, 0.0, whatever milliliters. You click it, you inject it, and you squeeze the thing, and it stops right there, and you get exactly what you need. It's a pretty brilliant delivery mechanism. I think they have it for other medications as well. But these pens, they have, I think it's 3 milliliters of insulin in it, and it costs $100, which is roughly, in the United States, it costs $100, which is roughly about a month's worth for most people. Mm-hmm. That's $100 a month. That's $1,200 a year. Now, The problem is, in Mexico and Canada, you can buy those same pens for about $12, which is an 88% discount. And your annual cost, if you're doing them once a month, is $144, basically $150 versus $1,200.
Right.
So you're basically looking at a monthly savings of what annual savings of about $950, which is insane. I don't know if I did the math right on that.
You're saving $1,150.
Yeah.
Or
anyways,
1,050. Sorry,
1,050. Yeah.
We'll get there together.
Don't ask me to do math on the spot. So yeah, it's over $1,000, right? And and this is like, for the, like, if now I know a lot of people have insurance, which is great, but the reality is, like, we have extremely high insurance premiums, and that's because they have to pay for all these really high costs. If we were to cut 88% out of the entire pharmaceutical industry, our medical healthcare insurance premiums would plummet.
Yeah.
Because they're passing that cost. Yeah. I mean, the insurance companies are making money too, right? They're not operating at a loss. Everything they spend, they have to raise that money from us. And I know a lot of people are going to say, oh yeah, but it's greedy capitalism, and they would never lower the price,
Yes, they would.
Guess what? If they don't lower the price, they're going to lose our business, because we're going to say, hey, our medication now costs $150 instead of $1,200. And so what do I need insurance for?
Right.
And so if they don't lower their costs, they're going to lose the business.
Well, people just pay out of pocket,
which is fine. Exactly. What's the problem with that? And which is interesting, because that's how that's basically how the whole Mexican medical market works. And their medical market it's extremely affordable. Plenty of Americans come to Mexico to get everything from dental work to plastic surgery and everything, because it's inexpensive here, and the quality really is, just as good. I had an infection in my eye one time, and I went down to a doctor. They usually have like a doctor right next to the pharmacy. Mm-hmm. I sat with them for like 10 minutes. They wrote me a little prescription. It cost me like $10. Nice. Paid cash, no insurance, nothing. And I'm sure that's partially subsidized by the government, because there are a lot of poor people who go here who could not go to hospitals and everything else. But at the same time, it's like the cost is relatively low, because they're not sitting there filling out all the required forms, asking about all my allergies and all this other stuff. They're addressing the actual problem that I came in for. They're not weighing me. They're not checking my blood pressure, and all this other stuff that's completely irrelevant to the fact that I have
quit doing drugs and quit smoking and bite me.
Exactly. So it's like, you cut all that crap out, they can get through a lot more patients in the same amount of time. And the pharmacy is right next door, and they just say, go buy whatever you need. It's not even a prescription. It's really just a list, because if you knew what you needed, you could just go and buy it, which, going back to the insulin in the United States. Okay. So you got to pay $1,200 to get your insulin every year. You also have to go see a doctor every 6 months or so.
Right.
So let's say that's an extra $100, $200 per visit. You're now looking at another $200 or $400 per year. In addition to that, in Mexico, you don't need a prescription to get insulin. And, there's no problem with it down here.
Wait, you don't need a prescription? You can just go into a pharmacy and say, hey, give me some insulin?
Just go in and say, exactly. And that's how most medications are, because this is the thing. Like, people in America believe that the FDA is protecting them by saying that you need a prescription to get insulin.
And you can't have menthol.
Yeah. But there's no outbreak in Mexico or anywhere else where you don't need a prescription. There's no outbreak of insulin abuse or anything like that.
Right.
Like that's what.
Although in America we have rationing because it's so expensive, people can't afford it, and then they don't take enough, and then they die. Thanks a lot, FDA.
Right, and going back to the insurance, because a lot of people think they're safe because of their insurance. When we had this freeze in Texas and we lost a lot of power, people's refrigerators stopped working for an extended period of time. The insulin goes bad.
Yeah.
So their insurance only covers a certain amount per year, right? It only covers what they're expected to use. So if they had just bought 6 months worth and then it went bad, their insurance, it's out. So what's interesting is, instead of spending $1,200 to go buy another 5 pens, what they can do is, they come in boxes of 5, so $500 to get to get 5 pens. Instead I'm mixing up all kinds of numbers here. Instead of paying the $1,200 for your next year's supply, you could actually just go down to Mexico, take an all expense paid trip, paid vacation, go spend some time on the beach, get your medication, stay at an all inclusive hotel, which includes all your meals and everything else, get your medication, fly it back, and you'd be set for the next year.
Right.
And you had time off of work and everything else. Like,
and probably spend less money.
Yeah, that's how much money we're wasting on this stuff in the US. And it's not just that. It's inhalers are like a tenth of the price. Hydroxychloroquine you can get down there without a prescription, which a lot of doctors are coming around. I actually saw a list that was published the other day. If you get COVID, this is a list of doctors who will actually prescribe hydroxychloroquine for you. But you still got to pay, the higher American price. It's even though that one's not super expensive in the U.S. because
it's not under a patent anymore. It's free. So a lot of everyone can make it now.
Yeah, and that one, that's the one that they said, oh, it's super dangerous, and it's like, no, I had that when I went to Uganda, just as like, they gave
like bite me.
Take it just in case.
It's been in use for 68 years or something like that.
Yeah.
It's in use all over the world. I've had to take it when I traveled outside of the country. So they're full of crap. When they're like, oh, it's dangerous. It's like, no, it's not. I think I took it to prevent malaria or something like that at one point.
Yeah,
in my
exactly.
life,
that's what I had it for. And it's like, it wasn't even, it doesn't prevent malaria. It's if you get it, it helps you, you fight it off faster. But they tell you to take it before, like, as even if you don't get it. Exactly. Yeah. So it's like, that's how high the risk is, right? Like,
I remember when I was going to travel to Africa, the doctor told me, I'm going to give you this script for hydroxychloroquine. I'm like 22, 23 at the time, something like that. And he goes, so, and this what it's for. It's like, it helps with malaria or whatever, if you get malaria, since that's where you're going. And I'm like, okay. And I said, so like, if I get it while I'm there, I take this. And he goes, no, just take it. And I'm like, what do you like? Just take it. He goes, take it. And then, if you get malaria, it'll be way, way less on you. You won't, it won't kill you. And I'm like, okay. Yeah, and then all of a sudden it's like, no, it's so dangerous. You can't take it. Like, well, yeah, they literally gave it to me 15 years ago.
Yeah, it's nuts. And I mean, I did that. I went 2 years ago to Uganda, and that's when I took it. So like, even recently, they're still doing it. There's another one that that doctors have been using as a they call it like prophylaxis or something, which is like basically, same kind of thing, but it's like what was that other one called? I don't know, but it was another drug that's been around for like decades. Mm-hmm. And they're like, oh wow, it's this new one that we found is working really well. They did a bunch of studies where like they gave it to was
that like the Z-Pack thing, the azithromycin or whatever, something like that?
No, yeah, I think it had
or
an X in it,
Aberactin. I don't know. There's a bunch of them. Who knows?
Yeah, there's that's the thing. There's probably so many things out there, because at the end of the day, all you're doing is boosting your own natural immune system.
Yeah.
To fight this stuff. You don't need to like train it specifically against one particular virus, because we're still dealing with our own immune systems here. And like they did studies where they gave it to the healthcare professionals, the doctors and nurses, and they said, of all the doctors and nurses that took this in one hospital, none of them got COVID, versus another hospital where they didn't take it and they had the same procedures as far as masks and everything else, the same number of patients coming in, and half of them got it. And it's like, okay, so it's pretty freaking obvious. And this guy was a doctor who was like, he was given his credentials. He's been written up in like a million different magazines. He's had all his articles peer reviewed.
But he's not Dr. Fauci, so he doesn't.
And he was testifying to Congress about this.
Oh my God.
And it's just like, yeah, and it's exactly. He's not Dr. Fauci. He's not like which I heard this and I thought that's absolutely ridiculous. Dr. Fauci is the highest paid federal employee.
Yep. He sure is.
That's not a red flag.
Like I have a lot of trouble calling him Dr. Fauci, because I'm like, doctors are supposed to see patients at some point, and this dude hasn't seen a patient since he was the patient. So right. But we got a little derailed there. I want to come back to these pens and stuff and insulin prices in general. A lot of people don't know that America, the federal government, has this incredibly moronic law that no no company is allowed to sell a medication for less money than an American company that has the same thing. That they're not allowed to compete. And so when I hear libertarians especially go, well, it's a free market. No, it's not. That's not true. Like, you probably know more about that particular situation than I do. If you want to talk or speak on that.
This is, you're absolutely right. And free market has become like a dirty word in some circles too, because you have like a lot of the leftists who are pushing for Medicare for all, or universal healthcare, all these other things. They believe absolutely without a doubt we have a free market system, and it's obviously completely failed because people are just greedy. But the truth is, if we had a free market system, we'd be able to call up any pharmacy in Germany and say, hey, I want some of that insulin. Just ship it to me. Just ship me like an entire shipping container full of it.
It'd be like Amazon. You just go, oh, send me that. And they'd be like, you got it, boss.
Exactly. And you can. And in fact, I even went to go to Amazon just to see if I could figure out what their pricing was on insulin, and how much it costs to ship and everything else. And they won't even get me to the pricing page until they have my prescription. I can't even see how much it is, which is absolutely insane. And it's the same with the pharmacies. Like I've gone into pharmacies and you start asking questions and they're like, well, first let me put in the information. It's kind of like the joke they make about like when you go to AutoZone and you're like, I'd like an air freshener, and they're like, okay, what year, make, and model do you have?
Yeah.
They have to fill out
tires.
Exactly.
Like white walls or not. It's important now.
There was I picked up a medication before. I don't remember what it was, but they were like asking for, I had to show them my ID, and at that point I didn't have a driver's license, just a passport. Because I got rid of my driver's license because I'm tired of dealing with the government that much. So I show them my passport, and they're like, what's your address? And I'm like, why do I have to give you my address? And they're like, oh, because this is a controlled substance and blah, blah, blah. Like all this. And I'm like, what? You think I'm going to make meth with it or something? And basically, yes. So I have to give them an address, and I'm like, I'm not going to give you my address. So I gave them some fake address, and they gave me the medication. And it's like, what the hell kind of system is this? Like, it's, you absolutely must know where I lay my head at night so you can give me medication to save my own life. What if I'm homeless?
Yeah.
Right. But then at the same time, but at the same time, like they don't verify any of the information, so you can just lie through your teeth and tell them whatever you want, and they'll just be like, okay, fine. Like,
yeah, it's insane. It's kind of when you go to the pharmacy and they go, oh, do you have any questions for the pharmacist? And it's like, no, and they're like, okay. It's like, what question? I don't know. I can't pronounce whatever God wrote on this. And it's like, what question am I supposed to ask? I don't know what the fuck to ask. You know what I mean?
How do I pronounce this?
Yeah, how do I pronounce this? Can you tell me that? Like, but let's talk about the Fauci ouchie for a minute. They're really pushing it. Like, I've never seen them push something this hard, and it's creepy to me because I'm like, what are they doing? Like, I don't understand, But there is a good argument to be made. Tim Pool makes this argument. How many times you go to the doctor and they say, oh, okay, well, this is what's wrong with you and this is what you're going to take. And they write you out a prescription and you don't question it. You just go, okay. You know what I mean? And now all these people are like, well, I don't know what's in it. I don't know if I want to put it in my body. And I'm like, how many times have you ever asked that question in your life? You know what I mean? I'm going to guess a lot of people have never done that. They're just like, well, the doctor said it was good, so, I'll take it. And so, I mean, I don't care. I'm not getting it. I don't need it, I don't think. But I'm not going to tell anyone, oh, you shouldn't do that, you commie, or whatever. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
You do you. I would say talk to your doctor, But it seems to me like, and there's actually some people in Congress that are now trying to push to make it like the law that you have to take it. And I'm like, no, I don't like that at all. You know what I mean? Like,
the vaccine passport and mandatory, mandatory if you
show
want
me
to
your papers, boy.
Yeah. It's and the whole mandatory thing to like to go to a public school, it's like, if you think about it, if you look at the bigger picture, like, that's not even that offensive to me, as much as the fact that you have to pay for public school in the first place. Because if I had my choice, I would rather send my kids somewhere else. I don't have any kids, but I would rather send them somewhere else. If I'm going to pay for it anyway, I would rather pay for something that's not government. And
but
that would
how
give me
about
the
the
choice
fact
because
that even if you don't have kids like yourself, you still have to pay for those public schools. You know what I mean?
Right. It's like there's so much wrong with that. I mean, you look at like, okay, yeah, you're paying for that anyways. Oh, and you know, people say things like, I don't want to grow up with stupid people around me. Yeah, I don't either. So I'd actually
That's
like
why I
donate
wouldn't
some
send
of
them
my
to
money
public
towards.
school.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, the cost per student of a public school is like so much more than a private school. You've got I think like,
well, okay, we're not like the uppity up, yeah, you know, super private schools that the rich people send, but the majority of private schools are actually far cheaper than public schools.
But there's like this the homeschooling stuff, right? Like it never made a whole lot of sense to me, but I talked to a bunch of homeschooling moms and, you know, and talked to their kids and like saw like what the actual results were. And like, these are schools that basically they're schools, they're at home. You're paying for internet. So you're paying $50 a month and you might pay a couple $100 a year for curriculum. It's like dirt cheap. It's nothing. And the kids that are coming out of these programs are like rocket scientists. It's like it's amazing how far advanced they are. You know, I had one friend who homeschooled her daughter until she was in, I don't know, until she was about 10 or something, and she said she wanted to go to a regular public school, so she went, and she was already like ahead of everybody else, right?
Yeah.
Because she was just going at her own pace. She was learning because she was interested. She had more fun with it. But she just wanted to spend more time with other kids. So, you know, so she went and she did that, and she was just like the most advanced student in the school. And she continued doing some of the homeschool stuff on the side of the public school. But like, it's like, okay, we can look at that because I know a lot of people have this objection, right? Oh, there's no social interaction when you go to public school. Well, there isn't anyways, because they tell you to sit down and shut up the whole time, right? So it's not like, you know, you get to play for a half an hour.
Permission to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, it's nuts. Which is like, that's the factory thing, right? They're trying to teach you to like to put your bio breaks on a schedule so that you'll be better suited to work in a factory without jamming up.
Which is hilarious because they keep sending all the factories overseas.
Right.
So you're training these people for something that is not useful skill set.
Right. It needs an overhaul.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is like, so homeschool is clearly better in so many ways. It's a lot less expensive. It's so much better. Your kids get smarter. There's a problem with social interaction. Okay, so why don't we take the homeschool thing that's already so much better and fix the social interaction part of it and figure out a way to
here's like what? Go knock on your neighbor's door and say, our kids should hang out.
Yeah.
Come to a barbecue.
Right? And they have these like collective homeschooling like groups, which is great too, because if the parents are working, it's like, you know, the parents take turns, you know, who's supervising the kids while they're homeschooling, and then they get their social interaction in. There's so many solutions to these problems that everyone brings up, but it's like,
I'm a big fan of these pods that a lot of parents have started to do.
Yeah.
Because they get that, but it's a homeschool type setting, but they do get that social interaction with other children that don't live in their home, you know?
Right. And so going back to the main point, so now it's your friends and your family are the teachers, are the school, are the administrators. You get to decide whether or not you want to make mandatory vaccinations for that group. You have that right.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's a smaller group, so you probably have less risk in the first place.
True. I mean, but
you also have less risk of bullying and all that other nonsense that happens in the big prison style schools.
Yeah, that's what they are. The high school that I went to, like, literally had a 8-foot fence around it with barbed wire at the top. Wow. And there was no reason for it. It wasn't like in a major city. You know what I mean? This was not it wasn't, there was no reason for it.
The contractor was like, for an extra $5,000, I'll put barbed wire up there. Okay.
Yeah, I'll just, we'll lock these little bastards in here. Like, no problem. And I will add that, on a security fence, you're going to have that kink, and it's going to go to the outside. That's to discourage people from climbing over. It went the other way.
These were going in.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's a prison fence, you know? I actually said that to the resource officer once. I said, why do we have a prison fence? And he's like, I don't know. And I'm like, okay, well, there's that. But I actually, I abhor bullies. But I think, especially public school now, fucking everything is bullying. And they have these zero tolerance, you know, dumb shit policies or whatever. It's like, well, you bullied them, you're expelled or whatever. And that depends on your class in the school, obviously. Like, you know, if your parents donate money, then you're less likely. This is just a real thing that happens, whether people like to admit it or not. But I think it's a hard way to put it. What we constitute as bullying now, in a lot of cases, I don't think it is, and it's just turning everyone into a bunch of fucking pussies, and that's irritating because having someone kind of push back on you, I think, is actually good in the form of building character and building strength of character. And unfortunately, these young people are no longer getting that, and I think that's kind of a problem. So, you know, in a homeschool environment or smaller, like a pod, something like that, I think it's a better situation where the person can go, hey, you know, you don't have to be a jerk or whatever, but they're not getting expelled, whatever, and you still get to build that character. I mean, I don't know where your thoughts are on that, but
yeah, no, I think there's definitely, I mean, like, these are the things that, like, it's interesting. Like, we don't consider these to be part of our education, but they're things that, like, we all learn and go through that turn us into us. And I think, like, you know, you're right. There is you know, like, I can even picture, like, you know, Sesame Street or something, right? They picture, like, some kids getting into a conflict and, like, oh, how do we deal with this conflict, right?
Right.
I remember when I was in school, like, it was always like, you know, go get a teacher, right? Go get a supervisor, like, never fight back, never defend yourself, you know, none of this stuff. And, like, and it's like that of course reinforces the whole statist mentality of, if somebody breaks into your house, if somebody's, you know, like,
harming
you out of your car to steal your car, don't resist, don't fight, just pick up your phone, call the police. And it's like that. In some circumstances, maybe, if you're, like, way outgunned and outarmed, you know, maybe. But it's like, in so many cases, it's like, no, if you just simply stood up for yourself, you know, you'd be fine.
Well, the other thing to that, though, is government has done everything in their power, especially in these major cities where you're more likely to get carjacked, you're more likely to get held up at knife point, gun point, whatever. They've taken your ability to defend yourself away from you. So when they're like, well, you know, don't fight them, you know, just give them your wallet. Yeah, that makes sense. You know what I mean? Because it's not worth your life, whatever. It can get replaced. It's a fair argument. The better argument is, fuck that. Carry a gun so you can defend yourself.
Right. Make that decision based on your own ability. Because, I mean, yeah, it's right. Like, you know, you might have insurance on your car. You might not. You might be living out of your car, and, like, that's like, no, that's like the bottom of, that's like the last straw. It's not going to happen. Like, it's my life or my car. You know, like,
and if you live in your car,
everyone's got different reasons. Which, and I mean, that just blows my mind too, because, you know, like you were saying about Texas, which is, you know, hopefully we've got a constitutional carry law on the table. That passed the state house.
Your house also passed recreational marijuana. So
we'll see. So we'll see. It might just get tabled and disappear. But
the constitutional carry, I love watching all these cops, like, clutch their pearls down in Texas. Oh, they make our jobs more dangerous, and it's like, why?
Right, like, it
should make your jobs easier.
I had a friend who was actually he was staying down in McAllen, Texas. He didn't have a place to stay. He was sleeping in his car, and he was only there for, like, just a few days, and then he was leaving. And he was from, like, Tennessee, I think. And so he had his gun, and he put it on the dashboard to make it visible, because in Tennessee, that's the law. If you're sleeping in your car, it has to be visible.
Right.
And like, he didn't think, like, oh, Texas might be different. Right. So somebody calls somebody. They don't even see the gun. They just say, "Oh, there's a guy sleeping in his car in front of my house." So they call the police. The police show up and they say, "Oh yeah, your gun's visible and that's a felony." So so not like oh sir, oh you're from another state.
You shouldn't do that.
I can see your driver's license.
Yeah.
Just cover it up and then drive somewhere else because you can't sleep in front of these people's house. End of story. That could have been it.
Which is the way, if police like that, you know what they wouldn't have? A bunch of songs that said "fuck the police" and people throwing Molotov cocktails at police stations. I'm just saying.
Exactly. This is why people hate you. You don't have to enforce every single interaction that you have. You're like,
and that is
stop enforcing the law and collecting revenue.
At 5 different times where the U.S. Supreme Court has said they don't have to do anything. They don't have to intervene. They don't have to do anything. It's 100% up to them. So they could literally just, like you said, look at the driver's license, go, look, man, that might be the law where you're from, but here it's different, you know. So you can't be doing that. Other than that, have a good day, you know.
Yeah.
No,
I mean, they have
a
cite and release. They have a cite and release program. They've had this in Texas for like, I don't know, a decade now, where if you get caught with possession of weed, it's the police officers or department's discretion, because the officers still do whatever their chief tells them to do, right?
Right.
They can either write them a ticket and tell them to go. It's still a misdemeanor. They still have to show up in court, all that kind of stuff. Or they can arrest them for possession of cannabis. And like half of the departments in Texas still arrest. It's like, why? You could just write them a ticket. Why are you wasting all the money? Why are you like making this so difficult for people?
It's insane to me. Like, I don't understand. I'm like, you know, I'm a big fan of defunding the police, but that's all the way to the point. And when I say defund, I mean abolish. Because if these people aren't gonna, you know, they're over here going, oh well, we threw Derek Chauvin in prison or whatever. The system works. No, it doesn't. The system put George Floyd and Derek Chauvin in this position. I'm sorry. That was the system that put them there. So you throwing this guy in the clink didn't change anything. You know what I mean? There's going to be another George Floyd. There's going to be another Eric Garner, all that. And all these people are like, we won. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. They fed the piranhas guppy to shut him up. That's all that happened there. Exactly. And rather you care if he's in prison or any of that, that's what happened. That's just the bottom line. The state failed to deal with this officer from previous situations. They're the ones that put all these laws in place. They're the ones that told this guy go enforce this stuff. He did that. Did he do it improperly? Yes. But they were like, oh, sure, you guys are mad. Here's a guppy. That's what they did. Nothing changed.
Right.
No laws changed. They didn't say, oh, you know what? Let's really look at all this and like change this stuff around. They didn't do that. And they don't have to, because the piranhas in the river went, okay, we're okay for a minute. It's ridiculous. People are dumb.
Yeah, it is. And you know, I mean, I'm. This is one of the things. I mean, I've got a half a dozen organizations that I'm starting right now that are just all like really focused on changing the social narrative that we have, because the reality is, like, you know, we're fed the propaganda, and that's just what it is. You know, we are all being controlled, and I don't care if you're red pilled. I don't care if you don't watch TV and you say I'm not being controlled. You're still being controlled. It's
for sure.
You know, it's like you can't shut it off. Like, even if you know it's there, you can't ignore it. You can't shut it off. It's still affecting all of us, and we need to really change the way that we think if we want to have any kind of real, lasting, meaningful change.
Yeah. Give me just 1 second, right quick.
Yep. I guess I could do a little song and dance. I'm gonna go read some comments. I can't. Oh, you're on mute.
There we go.
I was trying to come up with some sort of entertainment to keep the show going.
Nice. Okay, so you spend about half your time in Mexico, a little more, or?
About most.
Well, I mean, you know, if you got elected governor, you probably couldn't do that anymore.
Yeah, no, definitely. But this is like what I see, and obviously, if I did get elected, I'd be moving back there and spending most of the time in Texas.
Yeah. Your
But
capital's Austin?
yeah.
Okay.
Which,
Central. I like it.
yeah, it's nuts. But the reality is, a lot of people tell me, well, first of all, I don't have a snowball's chance in hell of winning because I'm either running as a libertarian or an independent. And it's like, yeah, I get that. But what people don't understand is that it's not necessarily about getting the votes, because we need a culture change.
Yeah.
And that culture change, getting somebody elected does not change the culture.
No,
you have to change the culture to get somebody elected. And that's why, libertarians are never winning. Not on a major scale anyways, because they have something like 150, 190 elected libertarians across the country in small local offices, which is great. But in order to get that big political swing, you need to get people to really start adopting that mindset. And you're not going to come to them in one election cycle and say, oh, hey, I'm this, wonderful libertarian, everybody should vote for me. That's just not going to happen. The reality is we need to change the culture. And this is why I'm working with all these different organizations to kind of, focus on all these different issues and really get people to start changing the way that they think, to see everything that's going on. So to me, this is so much more important than actually walking away with some number of votes. Which I know, like, a lot of people are like, oh, he's not running to win. No, that's not it at all. I understand the only way to win is to first change the culture, because winning any other way, it's like you might as well just be pandering. You might as well just run as one of the two major parties and tell people whatever they want to hear. And that's just not something I can do.
Well, and I agree with that, but I would say that I think, and this is going to come down a lot for the Libertarian Party for sure. It's going to come down to a lot of, if they can focus their messaging. So you think whatever you want about the Mises Caucus or whatever, and what they're doing, my apologies, Nevada, that didn't work out for you. But they're very focused on their message, and messaging builds culture. It's just a fact of humanity. But I actually see a lot of disaffected Republicans and Democrats that have really started to ask me a lot of questions about the Libertarian Party. And their number one question is, well, you guys all seem to fight a lot. And it's like, well, yeah, but join us. And then, we can all come together. Like, what's your number one issue? Let's discuss that. How's that fit into the situation as a whole? How free do you feel? You know what I mean? So I actually think independents and libertarians are going to have a much better chance in the next couple of years than they've probably ever had. So long as, like what you said, if we can get that messaging right and get that culture shift where people start thinking about stuff, I see that as a pretty good opportunity coming up. I don't know about taking out governors and stuff right off the get-go, but I like the fact you're trying. But we were talking before we went live a little bit about we could start focusing a lot of our effort on sheriffs and district attorneys. The progressives have done a great job at focusing on district attorneys. Now, the people are really pissed about it because they got these very progressive district attorneys in places like Portland and Sacramento, San Francisco, and crime is just skyrocketing because they're like, well, I can't do anything, I think it's a good idea to start focusing a lot of effort there, because if you have the sheriff, then you don't have to arrest people for nonsense, first and foremost. And if you have the district attorney, they can look at it and go, well, there's no victim here. What the hell do you want me to do with this? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The problem is these progressive ones, there are victims and they're like, nah, I don't want to. And I'm like, well,
Right.
that's not a good idea. Let's not do that. But what are your, I keep hearing that Texas is turning purple. Do you think that's true?
That's really hard to say. I mean, definitely if you look at Austin, it's starting to do
Austin's not
that.
purple. Austin's blue.
Yeah. But I mean, like so many other parts of Texas, like it's still the same old Texas. And which is interesting because, you have all these representatives from around Texas, going to the state house. They have, a state assembly. They make their laws, and somehow we've got these restrictive gun laws. Although, in the past 5 years, they have been opening it up. They gave they gave us the right to open carry pistols a few years ago. Like we said, the constitutional carry is kind of on the table right now. But there are so many Texans who are, just the typical Republican. There's a lot of people who own farms, who are in the oil business. They hate paying taxes. That is still a lot of Texas. But you do have a lot of people coming from California, and I think most of those people are going to Austin. Some of them are going to some of the other big cities.
In a way, is a good thing because it kind of centralizes them. So they're kind of surrounded.
Right. Well, at the same time, too, it's like, I think they understand if they went to some of these other cities or like the small rural areas. Well, for one thing, Democrats don't typically like rural areas. Right. They're typically the big city, which is interesting because
they like culture.
Right. And I think a lot of the dynamics of a big city are where those things come into play. So, for example, like, in a rural place in Texas, you live on a 20-acre, 100-acre piece of land. Somebody breaks into your house in the middle of the night. You run out the front door shooting at them, and you don't have to worry about accidentally getting your neighbor in the crossfire or something, right?
Right.
But meanwhile, if you live in a city where it's like downtown New York, where everything's 100 stories tall and everything is so dense, it's like somebody breaks into your house and you shoot at them. It's potentially going through 20 different apartments. And, so it's better just to call the police. And I think and also, the fact that in those kinds of places, there's a police station on every other corner. So it's like the police are never too far away versus when you live out in rural anywhere, it's like they might be a half an hour away, assuming they're not busy. Assuming the one deputy sheriff that you have is not busy. Yeah. So, it's like it changes the entire dynamics of what the society is. And people, so many people are like, oh yeah, especially, the liberals, the lefties, they're, we have to pay taxes because we need police and fire departments and everything else. And it's like half of the country lives in unincorporated areas.
I shouldn't have to do that.
Right. Like people like half of the country,
for your cops, and that's
half of the country literally have no police or fire departments. They're not in incorporated cities.
They have a sheriff, maybe with a couple deputies, and then they have volunteer fire department.
Yes.
It has to go and raise money and do barbecues and all this stuff because they don't need them
and
for the most part. Yeah, it works great, actually.
It works. And so yeah, but this is the thing. They're two completely different cultures. And like you have like Texas, you've got like a few major cities with people who are from cities who are voting for those type of things. And they're creating laws that affect the entire state, which includes everybody in the rural areas. So like that's one of those things where it's like, people moving from California are naturally going to go towards bigger cities, right? Because that's kind of where they go.
It's what they're used to, and it's what they know.
Yeah. So it's interesting to see all that. I think, this is one of those things where we really just have to sit back and think and evaluate what type of society have we built and consider those types of consequences. Like, yeah, what's good for me might not be good for my neighbor. And especially if we're living in extremely tight quarters, why don't you go start a city that's like, Democrat city and let it run that way. And if you think that's right, that's fine. But don't try to especially when you try to pass these laws statewide or nationwide, especially the Medicare for all, right?
Ugh.
Try that in a city first. Try that in a city. Why do you have to force the entire country to do that?
You have all these people, these politicians that go, no, we got to pass this thing or whatever. You know, California could do that. They have a super majority. They absolutely could say, we're going to raise all this money through taxation or whatever nonsense they come up with, and then say, everyone's going to have healthcare. They could do that on their own. They won't. And they won't because economically they absolutely know it will be a disaster.
They need other
and they
states
can't
to pay
print
for it.
money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they need all these other states to get sucked into that. They need South Dakota where people are extremely healthy. They need Colorado where people are extremely healthy, and they're not going to be a burden on the system to pay for their shit. That's what this is about. You know what I mean? And then worse comes to worse, they can go, well, we're going to have to print some money, and the federal government can print money. No other state can. I'm a big fan of balkanization. I think that would be great if we did that, and just bust this shit apart. You know, decentralization. I will add to that 2016, Bernie Sanders was asked about gun laws, right, or whatever, gun regulation, and he said his exact words were, "Well, it's a urban versus rural argument," which is exactly what you said. You know, I'm out in the country. The cops are, the sheriff's department might take who knows how long to get to me. I don't have time to wait on them. You know what I mean? Like I'm in a shit situation right quick. I got to be able to deal with that. Texas, for one instance, got feral hogs like coming out their nose, and those guys got to deal with that. You know what I'm saying? That's a real issue that no one in New York City is going to have to deal with, right?
Right.
Yeah. But it is kind of a legit different argument. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Bernie Sanders used to say that, and now he's like, ban all guns. And I'm like, Jesus Christ. You people, like, anytime you centralize, it's always going to fuck things up for people outside of that center bubble that you're in, and that's a problem.
Absolutely. And that's,
we have that. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, so that's going back to what we were talking about with the insulin and everything too. Is it's centralized, right? We have one little tiny organization up there near Washington, the FDA, that tells us it's one central organization that gets to decide what we can buy, not just from the United States, but from the rest of the world in terms of our medications. And because it's centralized like that, it's one guy. I mean, it's not one guy, but it's like, relatively, it's one guy sitting there making all of our medical decisions for us of what medication we can and can't have. And that's
the doctor doesn't matter. The nurse doesn't matter. The hospital doesn't matter. It's one guy.
Yeah.
And that's insane to me. Michael Malice always makes sense to me when he says, like, you don't have the right to vote away my rights. I always find myself in trouble because they're like, you can't be a libertarian and an anarchist at the same time. And I'm like, yes, I can. Like, first of all, I would much rather you all just do you and I'll do me. But, if we're going to have a government, because we got to play in the system to get rid of the system, then I'm going to choose a libertarian government. You know what I mean? But you don't have a right to dictate to me shit that I can do to myself, like smoke menthol cigarettes. Like, that's ridiculous. And I know they make the argument, and this is the number one thing that I catch from both sides, honestly, for different reasons. But the left will say, well, your bad health does affect us financially. It's like, well, I have insurance, so no, it doesn't. You keep making my insurance more expensive, which is pissing me off, but I'm not affecting your outcome. You know what I mean? You, however, will affect my outcome. And then on the right, it's nonsense like, well, you don't, oh shit, what? Like, the drug laws, for instance, right? The right's all about like, no, you can't legalize drugs. And I'm like, why? What makes you think you get to dictate? And the argument always comes back to, well, these people get addicted and then they'll break in my house and like try to steal my stuff. And I'm like, okay, then your argument is that we should decriminalize self-defense so that you can shoot this motherfucker when that happens. Right? I mean, it seems reasonable to me. I don't understand. Like,
it's all based on fear and propaganda, right? Because at the end of the day, it's like, if you legalized weed, you're not going to have this brand new epidemic of people breaking into homes. If anything, you're probably going to have less of it.
I live 60 miles from Colorado, and I live in a state that doesn't enforce marijuana laws. I don't smoke marijuana.
Yeah, well, yeah. There's that side of it too. But how many people have broken into your house? Have the crime rates gone up?
None.
So right, and so like it's all, and this is like the same thing with Mexico. I hear this all the time, and you know, a lot of it comes from the tourism boards. Like I just found this one out recently. The whole "don't drink the water" thing. That you know, like I've heard since I was a kid. That was originated by the American tourism companies that were trying to get people to go vacation in like Florida and other places instead of going to Mexico.
Seriously?
Yeah, and it's like, and there was another one that was recent that was about the what was it? It had something to do with Florida and their beaches, and like, yeah, they're literally competing. But this is another one. Not really.
Nobody can compete with the beaches in Mexico. I'm sorry.
Right. Tomatoes. So tomatoes grow best in tropical environments, right?
Yeah, like southern Mexico.
They actually came like that's like their native region. And so Florida got pissed off at Florida and their tomato lobby, because yes, even like farmers and them all have like lobbies for all their crops. They said our tomatoes are not as good as the ones coming out of Mexico. Let's ban the ones coming out of Mexico so that we can sell more of our tomatoes. And it's like, so you want people in Florida to have to eat shitty tomatoes because you can't grow them that great.
Yes.
Like, grow something else.
That's how America works.
Like, yeah, they're taking away our freedom. They're taking away our...
And so I want to ban the better product so that I can sell my product. That's how America works.
And it's like, okay, I can deal with a slightly lower quality in tomato, but it's like, but should I have to? And then like, it's that, and then it's everything else and everything else and everything else. And like, that's just one example. And there's like a billion of them. And how much different would our lives be if every single thing, like if you go into the grocery store and you look at every single item on the shelf and you look at that and say, hey, this product could be 10 times better if the people selling me this product didn't outlaw somebody else from selling me a different product.
Yeah.
You'd be enjoying better qualities of food, everything.
You wouldn't have all the nonsense. We wouldn't have nearly as many fat people. Like, you know, I mean, what you want to talk about a public health crisis? It's not the fucking coronavirus. It's like an obesity problem, including obesity, look at the deaths from COVID, and it'll prove that. It'll prove it out. 78% were overweight, you know. So, you know, Mark Schneider wasn't wrong when he said, like, hey, you know, sugar's the #1 killer from a lifetime of living in America. He's probably right on that. I'm sure you could run a bunch of it right back to sugar causing a lot of it, because it's in fucking everything on the shelf for the most part. But speaking of, I'm glad you brought up tomatoes, because that's kind of funny to me. I did a show with Martha Bueno from Florida, and she's a grower, right? She's got a hemp farm there. And across from her farm is tomato farms. And her son, she told me her son had asked her, why are these tomatoes just ripening on the vine? And, you know, they're just not doing anything. And she said, well, because there's no one to pick them because the government's not letting them in. And they're actually actively paying them to just let them rot or whatever. And so this will lead to, I guess, what will be our final segment here is, we have hundreds of thousands of people in cages on the border. And I think accurately predict that if they were to go in there and go, hey, you guys want to go pick some shit around the country? 85% would be like, absolutely. And the other 15% that say no, those are the ones you send back. What do you think? I mean, you're down there.
I'm not really in favor of sending anyone anywhere, but I mean, I agree that most of those people would.
I'm not saying that yes. I want to see them sent back.
Right.
It's a little litmus test that you could do.
It's better than
who wants to work
making them rot in
cages.
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, like, you know, hearing about this, it's like so many other problems come from this too, right? You're gonna have. So if the food's not being picked, there's going to be food shortages, which means prices are going to go up. Eventually maybe they'll go up, and then they'll say, oh, hey, for $15 an hour, we can pay people, like, we're getting so much from selling these tomatoes, we can actually afford to pay people $15 an hour.
And then tomatoes will be $35 a pound. No thanks.
Yeah, exactly. And then everyone's going to go back to eating processed corn and corn,
which may be the plan.
Corn syrup. And and that's all we're going to be eating. And yeah, that's just going to like make us unhealthy as shit, and we're all going to die. That's as simple as you can put it. Really, it really is tragic. We already import so much of our food. So maybe we're going to just start importing more and more of it. It's like this whole idea of borders it's based on fear. Right. So they make us afraid. Oh, we can't open the borders because all these things are going to happen. Rapists and murderers are going to come. They're going to take our jobs, which no, because those jobs are open now and nobody's taking them.
Right.
Oh, they're going to smuggle in drugs. No, we're making our own drugs now. It's all based on fear and propaganda because, like I said, with the tourism board, like people like to have control over things. They're territorial, and they're just like these giant corporations and governments. They're just as territorial as gangs and cartels and everything else. Oh, this is our territory. We want to be able to tax everything that's going on here. Exactly. and so like, this is what it is. They're trying to control us so that they can profit. And that's really the only reason for putting up these walls and saying, we need to make sure we control what goes back and forth over the border. They tell us it's for our protection, but it's so that they can measure and tax every little thing that goes back and forth over the border. That's all it is.
Yeah,
that's all
absolutely.
It is.
I'm a big fan of going back to the Ellis Island model of name, country of origin. Do you got $50 in your pocket or a sponsor? Yeah. All right. Welcome to America. If you want to stay, start working on permanent residency or citizenship. But other than that, welcome to America. You know what I mean? Like, don't worry about it. And that's also, everyone's like, all these Republicans are like, oh, well, China's going to overtake America. Do you know how to stop that? Do you know the easiest way to stop that? Get a fuck ton more people here that are working for a better future, that can push back economically against that. It's really simple. It's not hard. Like, this is just basic math. You know what I mean? Which we attempted earlier in the show and we kind of screwed it up, but that's okay.
Right. Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. But we're also it's interesting because like on this human experience that we have and this evolution of society and culture, like we used to produce stuff that we needed to survive, and then we got better at it, so we were able to do it much more efficiently, and then we had all this extra leftover labor, and we started making just all kinds of ridiculous bullshit out of it. Look around your house. How much bullshit do you have like sitting around on your desk that's like, what do I have this? What do I need this for? How has this really made my life any better?
Everything on my desk is necessary except probably the cheese balls.
I'm doing the same thing here right now, and it's like it's okay here.
I have plenty of crap I don't need for sure.
So I had to buy a grinder once, right? So I got like a whole pack of these grinders, and like I've only used like one or two of them, but it was cheaper to just buy like a ton of them, right? Like, just it's our office, right?
That's
so
the
this
market
is mostly
we
where
live
we
in.
work.
Yeah,
but you go to your living room and you probably got like more stuff in there. I know I definitely have.
If I went in my garage, there you
go,
dude.
That's where
there's so much crap in there where I'm like, I don't even know why I own this.
We've got people who are hoarders now. Like, there are a lot of hoarders out there. That was never a
thing. There's an entire show.
Yeah, and it's all junk. It's all like collectible stuff, like Beanie Babies and Coca-Cola
hoarding
signs.
Came from the Great Depression. My grandparents were hoarders, but they hoarded for a different reason. They were like, dude, like stuff runs out, and like we want to make sure we have stuff.
Right.
But these people today, they just hoard weird shit that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and it's like, we have this consumer mentality now, and I think like that was part of it. Like, at some point we need to recognize, hey, we've become really efficient at producing the necessities,
Mm-hmm.
like we can slow it down now, right? We have everything that we need taken care of. We can stop. You know, we're working 40 hours a week. Some people are working 60 or 80 hours a week. Like, we can stop working so hard because the food, the shelter, the medicine, and everything else can be produced at such a low cost. I know the healthcare is really screwed up right now, but those things can
Well,
all
the
be produced
shelter
at such
can't
a
be
low cost.
produced at a low cost right now
And the
because
food and
you need to
and
be
the
a
medicine can
billionaire to buy
too.
lumber.
Well, but I mean, but there's already enough shelter already out there. It's not like we have to keep building at the same pace every year.
Right,
Um,
right.
and so, like, we can use all this extra time that we've created for ourselves by building. And I mean, think about it too. Like, a couple hundred years ago, houses wouldn't last that long, so you got to spend a lot of time rebuilding and rebuilding.
Right,
Now
right,
they
right.
last a lot longer. We've got so much spare time now, and we waste it earning money to waste on really just
On
stupid
junk.
shit, instead of reducing the amount that we're working and just enjoying our lives and
I
using it
agree with
to
you. I
create
agree with you.
create other things that are worth so much more than just basic survival.
Well, yeah, and then also people. I think a lot of the issues, at least in the Western countries, that they're starting to run into is we're not challenged anymore in the way that they were. I mean, even just a century ago, the challenges they face comparative to our challenges are not. It's such a joke. You know what I mean? It's the difference is astronomically different. You got people like literally tweeting photos of themselves saying capitalism sucks with a fucking iPhone. It's like you're an idiot just based on that. You know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
do not understand how the difference between your grandparents and you is like waves of difference of what they had to do and the hardships they face compared to you. Like, oh, like someone was mean to you on the subway, fuck off. Like, this is like not real. You know what I mean? This is not a real argument. And to that point, even other nations in this planet of ours that we all occupy and share together, India is in a pretty bad situation right now with the corona. And what does America do? Say, well, tough. We have the ability. We could go over there and help these people out in a heartbeat. We could send like, oh, this is how we make the vaccine. You guys can do that right there, whatever. We could send it. We could do whatever, and we don't do it. You know what I mean? So when these people say that shit, like it just pisses me off. And I'm like,
Yeah.
it really I really despise it. I will say that Kevin Hobby, are you familiar with him? He just won the LP chair in Oklahoma.
No, I don't know too well.
Okay, well, he tweeted something hilarious today. He said that he was considering selling his house for spare parts because of lumber prices and how high they are right now. And it is funny, but at the same time, it's also terrifying because people don't understand what that means. They don't
Right.
understand that all this spending the government's been doing, like, what is it between Trump and Biden now? It's something like $8 trillion in the last, fucking year? 14 months or something like that. And they're like, no, we don't have to worry about inflation. Really? Yeah, it's coming for you.
Not yet.
It's coming for you. You know what I mean? You can start to see it now in rubber, plastic, lumber. You're starting to see these effects coming, And people go, well, it's not food. And it's like, it will be. I promise you.
It will be soon. It will be soon.
And a bunch of people are going to starve to death.
I mean, if farms got to buy lumber, farms got to buy rubber, farms got to buy oil.
Buy fuel.
Yeah, it is definitely coming. And you look at any other country that had hyperinflation and they said the same thing. Oh, no, we'll be able to keep it under control. Right.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about inflation. No, they don't have to worry about inflation because they're trillionaires before the prices even go up. But by the time the money comes down to us, everything else is going to be more expensive.
And then by the time it comes down, everyone's so fucking broke that they have to spend it immediately to get food and whatever it is that they're needing. And so it just goes right back to the top.
Right.
You know, Jason
Yeah, and I
Stapleton
mean,
explains it really well. If anyone's interested, check him out. Wealth, Power, and Influence. It's a great podcast.
there was I knew a guy who lived in Zimbabwe. He had a factory. He was a multimillionaire. His family had a business out there. They had tons of money. And they started printing money, and it got to the point where like people would get their paychecks at the end of the day. They'd expect to get paid daily, which is I'm starting to see this now on some of the fast food restaurants, right? We need to hire you, we'll pay you at the end of the day.
Wendy's is doing it.
And they would get their paychecks at the end of the day, and they would go right to the grocery store, because if they waited till the next morning, they would be able to buy groceries even less.
Yeah.
No, the prices would just go up.
The inflation.
They had to spend it, because every single day prices were going up.
Michael Malice talks about that when his family first moved to America from Russia, that they would walk to a fruit stand and they would check the price of something. They'd walk an entire block away to another fruit stand. And if the other fruit stand was 3 cents more expensive than the other fruit stand, they would walk back to get it, because those pennies mattered. And we're getting back to that again. The poors are going to be in such a bad situation. They're not going to, they're going to be walking a block to save a few pennies, because it's going to matter.
And this is what really pisses me off about the whole situation we're in, is that we were doing so well for such a long time that we've had an opportunity for everybody to build and save, but we've been so obsessed with living beyond our means that anyone who has a house now has purchased it with debt. We're all of course tied to the property tax. And so things would not be so bad if everybody owned their home and was not paying rent and not paying property tax, because that's one of our biggest expenses. But now, because of that, it's going to be the same thing all over again at the beginning of the pandemic, when everyone was saying stay home and don't go to work. How am I going to pay my rent? How am I going to pay my property tax or my mortgage?
There's a rent moratorium. Don't worry about it.
That's only going to last for so long. That's the thing. And it's
Liberty Lockdown, who is a brilliant real estate investor. The guy, he made so much money that by mid-30s he retired. Like me and him are in 100% agreement on this one. That rent moratorium, that mortgage moratorium, that's going to get lifted. And we haven't seen nothing yet. The fucking fallout from that is going to make the Great Depression look like a joke. Because right now, 40 million people are over 6 months behind on their rent and mortgage. They're going to get evicted. The fuck are you going to do with 40 million people?
Yep. I mean,
it's a nightmare.
The only option is say, just let them own the place now, and then everybody loses their life savings and their income, their retirement.
That's a terrible idea.
I can see it happening. As much as that's a terrible idea, I
nationalize housing. I can see it coming.
Yeah,
they want to nationalize police. They'll nationalize housing and be like, "Well, you can't kick them out. You just lost your everything you worked for and everything you were building. Just sucks. Sucks to be you, bro. Sorry." Yeah, that's shit.
Unless you're a bank.
No, they'll get built out.
Banks aren't going to lose.
No.
Yeah, those are the ones.
Banks never lose, man. Whatever. Never.
Yeah. Yeah, it's absolutely insane. But it's, as much as everyone was like, cheering on Trump's economy, it's like, yeah, stock prices were going up, but we still never had a solid foundation.
For the average person.
Yeah, we need to have, like, if we were all financially independent, which Trump is. Trump's not paying rent.
No.
No. I mean, he's probably paying property tax on some shit, but he's probably got a loophole for that too.
Yeah, probably.
This is he's taken care of. He doesn't have to work. If you told him he could never make another dollar again, like, he's fine.
He would still have enough money that his great grandkids would be good. So it's all good on that.
Us.
All right. We are almost at an hour and a half here. So we are going to start to wrap up. For anyone that doesn't understand, I want to drive this point home to you 100%. Property tax is rent. You're paying rent to the state. So, you should vote to stop doing that. Also, Dan, what do you got going on? Where can everyone like come follow you? I know you got a show you do once in a while, which is fucking hilarious, by the way, most of the time. So everyone should definitely watch that. So why don't you tell everyone what's going on?
Yeah, so you can check out my gubernatorial campaign at danforfreedom.com. I'm working on a lot of really awesome organizations that are going to be promoting some very interesting libertarian perspectives. So stay tuned for those. But if you go to my website, you can follow me on Twitter. You can follow me on Facebook. It's got all the links there. You can follow me on YouTube, which is where you'll also find my live stream. Everything is linked from that danforfreedom.com. And yeah, just go check that, get on the mailing list and follow all my social media accounts, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, everything. And there will be updates, everything I do, I put updates everywhere. So whenever I'm smuggling in insulin, if you're somewhere that I'm going, I'll happily bring you some, and sell it to you at cost, which is an 88% discount.
Nice.
And yeah, there's so much going on. I don't even know where to begin, but
do you have any big guests coming up soon?
Let's see. Ashley Shade is coming on, I think,
nice.
this Friday. She's gonna be talking about GSM issues, gender and sexual minorities. And Wednesday I am gonna be on the there's a Texas hemp grower podcast. So that should be really interesting. And I have another side business. It's Nug of Knowledge, where we sell 50 state legal weed. So
nice.
Yeah, so I'm gonna be on a hemp podcast talking about that, which is gonna be pretty awesome. But yeah, I'm a pretty big advocate for legalizing cannabis. So that's something I want to see in Texas, and that's just another one of those projects I'm working on. But
I don't even smoke cannabis, but I'm a big fan of legalizing it, because fucking I'm tired of watching people go to prison for a goddamn plant. Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Fucking retarded. Right on. So you guys check all of his shit out. Follow him everywhere. He's very intelligent. He's also very funny once in a while when he wants to be. Check out his Twitter. Sometimes he posts some stuff that'll like kind of make you go, oh shit, I don't know. So that's fun. I have Jessica Green coming tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern. You guys can check that out. And then Wednesday's a big day for me. I got Pete Quinones at 8 p.m. Eastern. I'm really excited. We're going to talk about, the deep, dark military state. And I'm super excited about that, how they like to murder a bunch of people. And then we have the big nuclear show, where we have Kim Ruff from Arizona, who is a mining expert and environmental expert. And we also have Mark Schneider, the nuclear operator, and Magnus Panvidia, the terrorist, because it's always fun to have, a terrorist mixed with a federal, a person that requires very high level security clearance at the federal level. That makes me giggle. So peace, guys. Have a good one.